Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make panettone, which is a delicious Italian bread which they enjoy at Christmas. It's an enriched dough, and mine is going to be flavoured with the zest of orange, tangerine and lemon, and then it's going to have some raisins and some chopped mixed peel inside it. It's a very, very nice bread with a very open texture, and it's made in paper or cardboard moulds normally, which usually stand reasonably tall, and the dough rises up to fill those moulds. But if you don't have a mould, you can use a cake tin, maybe a 6 or 7 inch cake tin, and even if that's not very deep, you can line it with parchment paper to make it deeper. Basically, the parchment paper can come up above the surface of the rim of the cake tin. Now, it does take quite a while to make the recipe, because we make a starter dough, then we make what we call the first dough, and then once that's ready we make the second dough, and after that we have to leave it to proof in its paper mould until it reaches the top of the mould before we put it into the oven. So it's going to take a good few hours to make this, but you can start it one day and finish it the next if you want to. It's entirely up to you. Now, what I'm going to do, because there's quite a few stages, I'm going to put on the screen the ingredients for each stage. So we have a starter dough that uses some water, Canadian bread flour, a little bit of instant yeast and some caster sugar. And then for the first dough we use that starter together with more Canadian bread flour, more water, caster sugar, a medium egg and some unsalted butter. And then for the second dough we use the first dough, some more unsalted butter, some more caster sugar, 1 medium egg and 1 medium egg yolk, again large in the USA, more bread flour and some aromatics, as well as some raisins and some chopped mixed peel. And for the aromatics we use the zest of a lemon, an orange, a tangerine with some vanilla extract and some honey. And I will actually specify those ingredients in more detail as we go through the recipe. And so you saw those ingredients, and what I'm going to do is I will go through the ingredients again as we get to each stage, and I'll start off with the ingredients for the starter dough. And for the starter dough I have 80 millilitres, which is 1/3 of a cup of water. I have 60 grams, 6 tablespoons plus 1 teaspoon of a very strong Canadian bread flour. That's a bread flour which has about 15% protein. If you don't have that, use the strongest bread flour you can find basically. You want something stronger than plain flour, which is usually about 10% protein. Bread flour is often about 11 to 11.5%. If you can get stronger, that would be better. But if not, the bread flour will have to suffice. Then I have 4.5 grams, which is about 1.25 teaspoons of instant yeast. And I have 10 grams, 2 teaspoons of sugar. That's all we need for our starter dough. And I'm going to put the flour, the sugar and the yeast into a bowl. And I'll just give those a bit of a stir around. And then I'm going to add in my water. I'm going to mix this basically until it's a nice smooth batter. and it doesn't take very long. And to be honest, if there's a few little lumps in it, it really doesn't matter, because it will all get worked out when we use it later on. And that's good enough like that. So I'm going to cover that. I'm going to leave it in a warm place until it is very, very frothy and it's at least triple in size. And that can take half an hour, it can take an hour, it can take even longer, depending on the temperature in your kitchen. So I'll just cover that and I'll leave it in a warm place, and when it has tripled in size I'll come back and we can go on to make the first dough, which will incorporate this starter dough. So it's been almost an hour and a half and my starter dough has now almost or just about tripled in size. So that's ready now to be used in my first dough. And for the first dough I have that starter, and then I have 260 grams, which is 1 2/3 cups plus 1 tablespoon of Canadian bread flour. That's based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup. I have 70 milliliters, a quarter of a cup plus 2 teaspoons of water, 80 grams, 6 tablespoons plus 1 teaspoon of caster sugar, 1 medium egg, which would be large in the USA, 60 grams, a quarter of a cup plus 1 teaspoon of softened unsalted butter. And we need to mix all of these ingredients together to make our dough. And to make the dough I'm going to use my stand mixer, but you can do it by hand, but it is a very sticky dough. This is a sticky recipe, so a stand mixer is a good idea if you have one. So I'll put the water into my bowl and I'm going to add my starter dough into that as well. And then I'm going to put the sugar in and my egg, and I'm going to mix those to get them combined. And they're combined, so then I'm going to put in my flour and I'm going to mix that until it's turned into a shaggy dough basically. And that's quickly turned into a shaggy dough, and I'm going to knead that with the mixer running the whole time as I gradually add my butter, and then I'm going to knead it until it completely cleans the side of the bowl and it's all come together into a fairly smooth dough. So that's now kneaded, and it's still very sticky, as I said, but it's quite smooth and it's very stretchy. So I'm actually going to simply cover that with my lid, and I'm going to put it into a warm place until it's doubled in size. And at that stage I'll come back to make the second dough, but before that I'll also come back and just combine the aromatics ready for when we need them. So I'll put the lid on and I'll come back when this has doubled in size and we're ready to do the next steps. As we wait for the first dough to finish proofing, I'll go on to mix the aromatics together, and the ingredients for that are the zest from 1 orange, the zest from 1 lemon, the zest from 1 tangerine, 5 millilitres or 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 22 millilitres, 1.5 tablespoons of honey. And I'm simply going to mix them all together. So they can all go into the honey. And then I'll mix those into a paste. And I'll simply set that aside until we need it to go into our second dough. So my first dough has now been proofing, and it's doubled in size, and it's still in the bowl. I've left that to one side for a moment while I talk about the ingredients for the second dough. And for those ingredients, it will be that first dough, and then I have 120 grams, which is 2/3 of a cup plus 2 tablespoons of Canadian bread flour. I have 1 medium egg and another yolk of a medium egg, which would be large in the USA, so that's 2 yolks and 1 white basically. I have 60 grams, which is 1/4 of a cup plus 1 teaspoon of softened unsalted butter, 60 grams, 1/4 of a cup plus 2 teaspoons of caster sugar. I have 70 grams, 2/3 of a cup, sorry, half a cup of chopped mixed peel, 70 grams, 1/3 of a cup of raisins, which I have soaked in a little bit of water and rum, and then I've drained them off and patted them quite dry. And then I have my aromatics as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix the butter, the eggs, the sugar, the flour and the aromatics together, and once they're combined they will be added into the bowl with the first dough, and we will knead that until we're ready to add the fruit. So I'll put the sugar into a large bowl, and then I'll add the softened butter as well. And I'm just going to mix that around to get that combined. And then I'll add my egg and my egg yolk and mix it again. And that's good enough, so I'll add in the aromatics. And mix that to get that mixed through. That's good enough, so then I'll put in my flour. And mix that into a shaggy dough as well. So that's mixed up very easily, and I need to put that into our first dough and knead it. So I'll scrape the mixture and drop it in to the bowl of the stand mixer. And then we need to knead that until it all comes together into a nice dough. So I'm going to knead that until it comes together. And I'm going to continue to knead that for 10 to 15 minutes until it's nice and smooth. So I've kneaded that dough for a good 12 minutes. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add in my raisins and my mixed peel. I'm going to knead that again until it's fairly evenly distributed. So that's quite well distributed, I think. So I'm going to leave that to rest for an hour, but every 20 minutes I'm going to give it 3 folds. So I'll just take the bowl off the stand. And I'll just scrape it down . like that, and I'm going to cover it and leave it for 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes I'll come back and I'll have some butter on my hands, and I just pull the dough up and fold it over on itself, and I'll show you that. And I'm going to do that once, then leave it another 20 minutes and do it again, and then leave it another 20 minutes, and then put it onto the counter and fold it one last time before forming it into a ball and putting it into our mould. So I've rested this for 20 minutes, sorry, and I'm going to pick it up and fold it over like that a few times. And my hand is buttered. And that's good like that. So I'm going to leave that for another 20 minutes and do it again. And then 20 minutes later I'll come back and do it for the final time before we put it into our moulds. So I've tipped my dough out onto a surface which I have buttered a little bit, just so that it's easier to work with. And I'm going to do the final folds. So I'm going to lift that up and fold it over like that, turn it round, lift it up again and fold it over like that, and turn it round, lift it up and fold it over, and I'll do it one final time there, like that, and then I'm going to form that into a ball, creating some tension by pushing underneath like that, and that needs to go into a mould. Now I'm going to use, this is a Panettone mould. It has a corrugated bottom but sort of silicone wax or parchment sides, and I'm going to put that in there. If you don't have that, but you have a cake tin like this, and this is about 7 inches, 6.5 to 7 inches, you could actually put parchment in the bottom and parchment up the sides, and you could put it the parchment to come up above, and you can put your Panettone in there. You can do the same with a 9-inch springform pan, but you would have a wider rather than a taller cake, Panettone basically. So I'm putting my mould in there, and I'm just going to pick this up and drop it in like that, and I'm going to leave that. I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap over the top, and I'm going to leave it until it rises up to at least just about the top of this paper mould. Once it's almost at the top, I'm going to preheat my oven to 160 degrees Celsius, 140 Celsius with a fan, 320 Fahrenheit, and that will be ready to bake the Panettone. But I'll come back before I put it into the oven, because I want to slit across on the top and just put a couple of little blobs of butter in those slits, so that as the Panettone rises, that butter gets melted over the top basically. So, but I'll do that. Now this is going to take hours to rise because of all the butter and the eggs in the dough and the fruit in the dough. It's going to take a long time to rise. So as I said, it takes a long time, this recipe. I think this is going to be ready to bake probably at about midnight tonight, but hopefully I'll stay awake long enough to do that. So I'll come back and show it to you when I'm ready to bake it. My Panettone has been rising for almost 5 hours now, and it's just about reached the top of the mould, so it's ready to go into the oven, which I have preheating. So this is what it looks like at the moment, and as you can see, it's risen up quite nicely. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut across into the dough, and my razor blade doesn't seem particularly sharp, so I'm going to use a knife. And then I'm going to simply place a little bit of butter on each of the cuts, and I'm going to put that into the oven, and I'm going to bake it for 50 minutes. It's going to rise up and bake quite nicely. If the top is browning too quickly, I will cover it loosely with some aluminium foil, and after 50 minutes I'll take it out of the oven, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like, because we have to skewer it and turn it upside down, and then rest it upside down until it's completely cool. So I've baked this panettone for 50 minutes, and it's still very, very hot, but I need to turn it upside down to cool down. And to do that, I'm going to take a skewer and I'm going to poke it through, all the way through to the other side, and then I'll take another one and do the same again at about the same height. Like that, and then I'm going to turn that up into a pan. So I'll turn it over and put it into the pan like that, and I'm going to leave that in that pan until it is completely cooled down, and that's going to take 3 or 4 hours, and at that stage I'll be ready to come back, which will be tomorrow morning, and I'll cut into it and we'll have a taste of it. I've allowed the panettone to cool down, and it's now the next morning, so I've cut into it so that I could see how it looked inside, and I'll show it to you now. So it's actually very nice and fluffy. As you can see the nice aeration here, and the fruit is dotted throughout basically. So it does take a while, but it's very, very good, and I can squeeze it for you like that. Has a lovely aroma as well. So I'll have a taste of this piece. In fact, I'll break a piece off just so you can see how it breaks apart like that. That's very, very good. It's amazing the flavour that orange, lemon and tangerine zest impart into the whole dough, and then you get the fruitiness from the chopped mixed peel and the raisins as well as the lovely soft texture of the bread itself. This is very, very good indeed, and it's often eaten, from what I read, by the Italians after their meal on Christmas Eve, or and served with prosecco or a sweet wine, or it's eaten on Christmas morning for breakfast. Now I should say that you can put whatever you want in. I've just been checking online and I've seen some with hazelnuts in, some with pistachio cream, some with almond cream, some with chocolate chips. So almost anything you want. This is the classic version, and it's the version that I prefer. And I'm actually going to go out and buy a Panettone so that I can compare how the shop bought ones in those tins or in those cardboard containers compare to this homemade one. And I think the homemade one's going to stand up very well indeed. So that's going to be it for this recipe. I know that the whole process takes a long time, but it's well worth it if you've got the time. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there'll be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.